Hi guys, this is session 1 of the Law of Torts. This video will be especially useful for those that missed the session last week on Teams. It will give you a good introduction to this new unit, as well as reflecting on the last unit, the Law of Contract. As you know, I always like to review with a view to improve. So let's move straight on and look at the strategy. It's particularly important because I want to draw everyone's attention to the outcome of the law of contracts in terms of a particular issue that came up for pretty much everyone so far. But first of all, let's make sure we understand the strategy, and number one of that strategy is to understand the requirement, and this is very relevant to the law of contract, and I'll point out in a moment. Gather the information, obviously very important, we must all know about this now, and then to understand, connect and consolidate. It's these videos that are looking to help you to understand, connect and consolidate, as well as the sessions that we're going to be doing on the live sessions we do on Teams. So if you're not getting onto those sessions, you must try and get to those sessions because it's more interactive. You can ask me questions, you can hear what your fellow students are saying, you can learn a lot, you can gather a lot of information from them and from me, and begin to understand and connect this new unit, and then deliver the content. I'll talk more about the assignment. I'm going to introduce the assignment straight away. I'm putting the assignment on Moodle immediately. I want people to get to grips with exactly what this assignment is about. And what we're doing now is review and improve. And the reason we're doing that is because you must understand that when you submit an assignment to college or a university, they have a system called Turnitin, and it can measure the similarities of your work with any other work on the internet. And the general rule is to be below 30%. So you must understand the requirement is to be below 30%. If it's around 30% or 30 to 40%, all it means is the lecturer will go into the document and click the percentage button, which will highlight the document I'm going to show you now. This is just what came up with the current submissions. As you can see, there's all of these are above 30%. So certainly the ones between 37 and 41%, I would just click on and I'll be able to then see, as you can see now on your right, this is a view that the lecturer sees when they click on the percentage mark. It brings up all the different places that the work's been copied from. As you can see, this student, 71%. Just by the way, this isn't a student from current group. This is from a past student, but they got 71%. As you can see, they copied their almost their first paragraph from a fellow student at Waltham Forest College. So there's no getting away from it. If you copy, you're going to be found out, and you might not realize, but when you submit, you have to click on an agreement button, and that simply says that you're saying that you haven't copied anything, or you haven't copied that this is your own work, which of course, if you're getting 77% or 71%, that is not true, and some universities might throw you out, and that's why we don't do that. Certainly with your first assignment, this is a great opportunity for us to reflect and find ways to improve. So that's what we're doing now. It's good to to analyze what happened. That's the review part of the strategy, and it's good to be honest. Why are people just copying? Of course, it's easy, isn't it? Now with the internet, it's very easy to copy and paste things. But one of the main reasons is people don't plan ahead. The assignment deadlines are set months in advance, but yet people still end up doing it on the final week or final few days, or the night before. And if you left yourself a little time, the go-to strategy is to find something that makes sense and just copy and paste it. So poor time management is an issue. Some people can't manage multiple assignments. Once again, that's down to time management as well. You need to make sure that you spread out the tasks, you break them down into workable chunks, and I'll talk about that more later on, and that will make it easier. Also, the law of contracts, you're business students and law may not be your cup of tea, and you might have found it difficult to kind of get into the topic itself. You didn't understand it, and you didn't have much passion for it, so that could have been an issue. So it would be easy just to copy and paste. Lack of motivation also leads to a rushed job. We've talked about motivation before. There's lots of things you can do. As I said before, I'm not a big fan of motivation because it's so up and down. You need to come up with just a planning document that says, right, I'm going to do half an hour on this today. It's easy to just do something that's only going to take half an hour. You require less motivation to sit down and do something for half an hour, as opposed to spend the whole day the night before trying to do the assignment in time for the deadline. Some of you, English isn't your first language. I appreciate this, but unfortunately we can only grade on what is delivered. We can't take into consideration that, you know, English might be your second or third language, unfortunately. So what can we do? As I said, management. It's all about management. Planning is the key. Break everything down into small, you know, more achievable chunks, and that's what we're going to do with the law of tort. Today we're going to be by the end of today's lesson, you're going to be able to write the opening paragraph. That's all we're going to have to write, 150 to 200 words. You should be able to write this after this lesson. And for those that actually do that, once they watch this video and then write those 150 to 200 words, they have started some great momentum towards finishing this assignment on time. Those that just listen to this lecture and then don't do anything, you know, you're just letting it build up, and then you'll have to sit down and do the whole assignment in one go, and that's when, once again, poor quality comes out, copying and pasting happens, and low grades in the end. It's important to attend the lessons, to watch these videos, and then you've got a better chance of understanding, connecting and consolidating. Now the other thing we're going to be doing today, because it is inevitable that you'll be thinking, well, how can I explain what acceptance is in the law of contract? And you go onto the internet and you find a website and you go, well, that person's explained it really well, I can't explain it any better. So there's a temptation to just want to copy and paste that, and of course, as you've just seen with the Turnitin system, it comes up highlighted and you can't do that. So the other option is to be able to rephrase people's work, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So just a quick here, I'm not going to get too much into this. This is the assessment criteria for the law of tort. The reason I'm showing it, because it's very similar to law of contract in how this is going to work. For example, we talked about the 4 elements in contract law. Here we're looking at the essential elements and of the principles of torts. And looking at the actual assessment criteria itself, you know, we're going to be looking at how to apply these general principles of tortious liability, explain legal rules and principles, apply relevant principles in the law of tort as well, and case studies. All of this we've done in the law of contract, so it's just you know, following a very similar format, but obviously using a different area of law within the scenario. You'll be pleased to know this is the scenario here, and we're not going to get into it too much, but I will say this: there is only one scenario, unlike the law of contract where there was 2. So you only have to focus on this, and the main focus you can see immediately is to discuss the liability of Rupert to these other members. And you'll notice from the text they're talking about a car accident, and you know, they're looking, what you're going to be looking at is who is you know, who you're going to be assigning responsibility for this accident, who is liable for this accident, and that's all you really need to do. And we're going to look at how we can present that in, once again, another academic assignment. So yeah, let's get straight into what this assignment is going to look like, or the format it's going to take. And once again, I mentioned planning is the key, and this is what we're doing straight off. We want to plan the assignment paragraph by paragraph, because if we have a plan, then we're understanding what is required of us, and that's number 1 of the strategy. And this time it's important to know that the assessment is an academic essay, which means I don't want, you know, reports, loads of bullet points, images and things like that. I want an academic essay. So it's going to be, you know, well formatted, paragraphs, you know, this kind of thing, which you've already seen the video. Video 3 on the law of contracts goes through what an academic essay should look like. But it's important to know, that the requirement of this assessment is that you stay below 30% in terms of your plagiarism. That's something that I think people didn't realize in the law of contracts. So you're required, really, if we break it down, within your opening paragraph, if you like, to explain the meaning and development of tort. That's very important, to define and explain. Remember, it comes from the method we talked about before, the ideas method, which is identify, define, explain, and apply. So once again, we're following a very similar format with the law of tort. And as I always like to do, because you are business students, not necessarily law students, it's very important to connect why the law of tort is so important to business. And I think this is important as business students to do that, because then you get more connected with the subject. You see that it's important. It's very, very important if you're going to run your own business one day, you know, because ultimately we're talking about being sued, and if, you know, someone sues you or sues your business, that's the end of your business experience. So, you know, we need to put in there, I think, or it's good for the, you know, one of the opening paragraphs to talk about why the law of tort is so important to business. And then, of course, as you saw, one of the assessment criteria, the requirement is to talk about the elements. What are the main elements of tort law? And that is what we're going to go through during session 2. And then we'll look at the relevant case law. There's materials already on Moodle for that, but we'll be going through some of it in the sessions. And then to choose the case law that you can apply best to the scenario. That's really important. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Literally, that's all you need to do. I mean, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, maybe 4, yeah, 5 or 6 paragraphs there. And we're looking at a deadline, the 14th of July, essay format, and we're talking about 1,500 to 2,000 words for this assignment. So hopefully people are very clear from the offset, before we even get into talking about the law of tort, that what the assessment is all about, what you're expected to do in the assessment, and what each paragraph could be focused on. Now, this is a mind map, as you can see, so you can add to this. So, for example, the first, they call it a node on this mind map, ignoring the assessment one, is meaning and development of tort. There's no reason you can't do further lines off this little circle and add a few points of what you plan to include in that paragraph. And you could do that for all of them. And that's what, you know, a fully developed mind map would eventually look like. So then you'd sit down in front of your laptops and just write the assignment. It'd be much easier with that kind of planning in front of you. So, yeah, as I said, the opening paragraph is going to need to really discuss, you know, the concept of what is tort. And also, as I said, the opening paragraph is about focusing the reader on the topic and subject you plan to develop. It's also a good way to hook the reader, impress the reader, so they, you know, they stay engaged. So ultimately, you want to assume the reader knows nothing about the law of tort, and you want to clearly explain what that means. So naturally, you'll look at some of the resources, and you might find a definition like this from someone called Nicola Lava, 2018. And if you use this definition, as you can see, I've used that in-text citation, according to Lava, in brackets 2018. Now, what I would do, which I'm not showing here, is just after the close bracket on 2018, I would click in the references section, insert endnote, and that would allow me then to put the full Harvard reference at the bottom of the assignment in the reference section. I'll talk about that in a moment. But as you can see from this quote, the law of tort is a wide-ranging body of rights, obligations, and remedies applied by the courts in civil proceedings. It provides remedies, relief for those who have suffered loss or harm following the wrongful or negligent acts of others. You know, I mentioned this earlier. You're trying to express your understanding of what the law of tort is. You go on the internet, you find a nice little quote like that, you think, great, how can I explain it any better than that? I can't. I'm just going to use that one. And you don't reference it correctly, and therefore it becomes an act of plagiarism. So you've either got to reference it correctly, like I've done there, or you've got to reword it, like we're about to do now. And the way to do that is very simple. You pull out the key words. The key points here is a wide-ranging body of rights. As you can see, obligations and remedies applied by the courts in civil proceedings, provides remedies and relief for those suffered harm or loss, and talks about wrongful or negligent acts of others. So I've now taken out 1, 2, 3, 4 points from LAVA's original definition, and from these points I'm then able to write my own definition of what the law of tort is. As you can see, there is a body of rights known as the law of tort that are applied by the civil courts and determine obligation and remedies for those that have suffered loss or harm due to wrongful neglect of others. So it's different, it's worded differently, it's in a different layout to LAVA's original quote, but I was very much influenced by LAVA, so that's why I give her the acknowledgement by referencing her at the bottom, just as you can see in brackets. And that's how it works. You know, I've been influenced by what she said, so therefore I need to reference her, and that allows me to give my own definition based on influences that have come from her. So once you've done that, as I mentioned earlier, you need to put the you need to use the insert endnote function within just after the in-text citation. So in the case of the one I've just written, you've got at the end of the brackets 2018 close bracket, that's where you put insert text, and then that will then take you to the bottom of the page where you want to put in the full reference. Now I got this from a website, and so I need to take that reference and I need to put the URL into the Harvard reference generator, which will then give me this screen that you're now seeing on the right, and it will populate most of the cells. The one that I will need to adjust is obviously the access date to talk about when I actually read it. It could be today, and also the publisher. I might need to put that in there. In this case, it was the name of the website, which was called In Brief. And then I click generate. So I generate reference, and you'll then see this come up. I can then copy this entire thing into my reference at the bottom of the page, and that's how it works. And this is what we need to do more of, because some people still are struggling with this referencing and Harvard referencing stuff already, and this will be our second assignment together. So let's see if we can get this right on the second assignment. So once again, now we're going to develop what is taught, and you can see from the same website you've got some paragraphs here, quite short paragraphs on what tort law is all about, and there's some key things that are coming up in the first paragraph. So we're just focusing on this one. So it's all about a civil wrong by a tortfeasor, loss or harm to another. The tortfeasor is liable, different from criminal and contract. And this I think is a main point you want to bring out. It's often useful when you're trying to define and explain a concept. The way to get the reader to understand that is sometimes to tell them what it isn't as well. So in this case, you could say that, you know, the law of tort isn't is different from criminal or contract law. You know, in the sense it's dealt by civil courts. You know, criminal laws are wrongs against society and is comprised in legislation. Contract laws are rights and obligations between contractual parties. So you can mention those differences, and then what is really good, and it shows a good level of understanding and consolidation, is to be able to draw some similarities. So you can say that lines can be blurred between tort, crime and contract, as it says here. And then there's an example of assault and battery, which can be prosecuted by the Crown. You know, if someone assaults you, you can call the police and it becomes a criminal matter. But of course you can apply for financial damages, or there's also other things you can apply for through the civil courts, and this is where the law of tort comes in. Okay, so these points, if you were then to look at them like I've done here in isolation and have them lined up like that, and then in the red box you can then begin to write your own explanation of the law of tort. Remember the idea, concept. You've identified the law of tort is the subject. You've defined it using Nicola Lava's definition. Now you're looking to explain tort in more detail, and you've got these keywords and they're right in front of you here, and they will help you then form your own paragraph explaining what the law of tort is. You can also look at some of the areas that tort looks into, or some of the types of individuals and parties that are involved in the law of tort. As you can see, the Crown, companies, employers, employees, dangerous drivers. It's useful to get those examples in as well. And that's essentially what we're doing. Pulling out key points here again. Anyone can sue, even children and babies, and then give examples from the list. Okay. So yeah, we've looked at essentially a definition, 4 paragraphs, very short paragraphs about what tort is. We've pulled out the key words, and now what we want to do, we also want to mention one important to business. This is what we want to do next. We want to create our own introductory paragraph. As it says here, define tort law. You can either directly quote and reference, as I showed you earlier, someone like Nicola Lava, or you write your own, and if your own definitions have been influenced by a particular book or website, make sure you reference there as well. And then you're going to draw on some of the points mentioned earlier, that anyone can sue, give examples from the list, and say why it's important to business. So this first paragraph, you're aiming for around 150 to 200 words. In fact, why it's important to business can be done on a separate second paragraph if you want. The points that we've just gone over, I would try and condense them down into that first paragraph as an introductory to what the law of tort is. Okay, so that's your first challenge. After watching this now, I would literally aim to do it right away, get it over and done with. You can put it into the assignment format so you're ready, and that means that when you go to session 2, after session 2, you'll be instructed to then work on paragraph 2. And if you follow these sessions and the instructions, you'll have the assignment finished easily by the 14th of July, and with less pain and non-submission, which the majority of the class ended up doing. We can avoid that this time. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Any issues, get in touch with me on Teams and we can discuss there. Okay, bye for now.